So Gary Ridgway,
Who is he?
he is easily accessible, and he's well known, documented on. You can basically read up on him on Wikipedia, but I'll go ahead and read
What's
it.
he? Yeah.
Gary Leon Ridgway, who was born February 18th, 1949, also known as the Green River Killer, was an American serial killer. He was initially convicted of 48 separate murders. As part of his plea
Mm.
bargain, another conviction was added, bringing the total number of his conviction for 49, making him the second most prolific
Wow.
serial killer in the United States history, according to the confirmed murders. He killed many teenage girls and women in the state of Washington during the 1980s and 90s. Most of Ridgway's victims were alleged to be sex workers and other women in vulnerable circumstances, including underage runaways.
Mm.
The press gave him his nickname after the first five victims were found in the Green River before his identity was known. He strangled his victims usually by hand, but sometimes using ligatures. After strangling them, he would dump their bodies in the forested and overgrown areas in King County, often returning to the bodies to have sexual intercourse with them.
Oh Lord.
On November 30th, 2001, as Ridgway was leaving the Kentworth truck factory where he worked in Renton, Washington, he was arrested
Hmm.
for the murders of four women whose cases were linked to him through DNA profiling evidence. This was basically a saliva sample taken in 1984 when he was first arrested for having aggravated battery on a prostitute. So he didn't kill her,
Did
nothing.
you
But
did you say Renton, Washington?
Kenton? Oh, Kentworth. Sorry.
Oh, I thought.
No. It
Oh,
was yeah, no,
Renton.
Renton, Washington.
That's where your dad was born.
Okay, wow. As part of as part of the plea bargain, where he agreed to disclose the locations of still missing women, he was spared the death penalty and received a sentence of life imprisonment without parole. So
Okay.
he claims up to 71 victims, but he was actually convicted of
Whoa.
49. But what was interesting, part of his plea deal is any cases that are kind of resolved or they find any more bodies in that area are going to be connected to him. He's gonna take another
Oh.
charge for that. So
Whoa.
in 2011, they found another body in 2011, which they added to his life sentence.
Yeah.
And also, January of this year, they found another one through. They identified her as a 14-year-old Wendy Steffens, reported runaway,
Oh.
and Ridgway's youngest known victim. So she's 14 years old.
Oh, bless her heart.
So it's very
Oh
sad.
boy.
But
Very
let's
sad.
dig into his childhood. He
Yeah.
grew up in what became SeaTac, Washington. Although Ridgway struggled academically, he was held
Mm.
back 2 grades in high school, according to the prosecutor's report. He was socially
Hmm.
well. He was socially well adapted, so he was able to get along with other kids.
Oh, interesting.
Ridgway, yeah, he had no juvenile criminal record. And
Mm-hmm.
still, there were signs of a triad sociopathy. He committed arson, wet the bed until age 13, and he tortured animals, notably killing a
Oh
cat by
boy.
trapping it in a freezer, age 13. He was not the favorite child, which I think this is interesting. That honor belonged to Gregory, 1 year older than him. Gregory was widely regarded as the most accomplished sibling, having run for student
Mm.
office and later majoring in physics at a reputable college. Gary, by comparison, had an IQ of low 80s. For all the
Okay.
horrible things Gary Ridgway did to his victims, the only time he expressed true anguish was when talking about his own intelligence. Prosecuting attorney Patty Yakes stated, the
Wow.
one time he genuinely cried was when he talked about how afraid he was of being put on the short bus.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
I suspect that having a brilliant brother was a big thing that shaped him. Gary's the troubled one, not the smart one. I suspect that was a big issue for him throughout his life, says Yakes. Perhaps being a serial killer was something he could succeed at.
Now, was he raised by both his parents?
Yes. His father was a bus
The
driver.
father.
Yeah, his father. Father was a bus driver. His mother was a
Yeah.
sales clerk at J.C. Penney. The younger Ridgway later claimed that his mother engaged in inappropriate behavior. Notably, he alleged that after wetting the bed, a habit that persisted in the early teens, she would wash his genitals. His father was a bus driver who would tell him about whores and tell Gary to stay away from them. Even weirder, Ridgway both hated and was sexually attracted to his own mother, and that his arousal triggered his hate for her. Although Ridgway admitted that he fantasized about killing his mother, he never thought she sexually molested him or saw a connection between the fantasy and his latest behavior. So even
Why
though,
was she cleaning him?
well, I mean, if
That's
we don't know the
disgusting.
context, yeah, it does. It seems very weird,
He's
but
13. He's not 2.
here you go. He has a low IQ. He's almost going to be put on the short bus. He's
Oh,
still,
that's
still wetting the
disturbing.
bed at 13. But yes, it's not necessarily evil what the mom did. She shouldn't have done that. But the way he's registering it as he's being,
I don't know. I think she's.
that's kind of weird.
Well, I don't think she's
Um,
as innocent as we may think, you
I
know.
mean, although disturbing, I don't think any of those events can demonstrate a motive or for homicidal tendency. Really, many people have had worse childhoods. You know what I mean? But
Well, I know,
still
but just
weird.
the fact that, he had this thing with his mom,
Hmm. Yeah, it's really
I
weird.
think there's a lot more there.
Um,
So, that impacted him is what I mean.
what's this later behavior can be summed up into what we could call the careerist approach to serial murder. This is why Gary Ridgway is
Mm.
an anomaly. This is from the Washington Post, so listen to this.
Mm-hmm.
As the narrative unfolds, what first becomes clear is that Ridgway took a more disciplined careerist approach to serial murder than any other. Um,
Hmm.
he sweated every detail of finding, killing, and disposing of human beings. Though his IQ tested in the low 80s and he barely made it through high school, he could recall each detail with a level of precision that staggered investigators.
Hmm.
Before his confessing began, Ridgway had been remarkable for his ability to keep his mouth shut. Investigators say that from the time he
Hmm.
started strangling prostitutes in 1982 until he cut the deal this year that spared him the death penalty, he never told anyone about his killings. After his
Hmm.
arrest, his flabbergasted wife, who he'd been married
Hmm.
to for 17 years, told the lawyers he treated me like a newlywed. He
Oh my
kept,
gosh.
he kept no incriminating trophies of his kills. Police never found any evidence of his in his house. Um,
Oh.
and although he said he strangled dozens of women there, he stripped jewelry from the bodies, sometimes leaving it in the women's restroom at his job. He painted where, he said his favorite thing was maybe someone's walking around with a piece of that jewelry that they found in the bathroom. He'd get excited.
Mm.
He always wore gloves with his dates. He would not pick up prostitutes unless they were alone. He bought new
Mm.
tires for his trucks when he felt they'd been driven too close to the side of a dumped body. He didn't smoke or chew gum, yet he left cigarette butts and gum wrappers near his victims' bodies as confusing clues. When one victim badly scratched his arm, he disguised the wound by basting it with battery acid. If a prostitute scratched or ripped his clothes, he would clip her fingernails before disposing of the body. He was nothing if not pragmatic. He liked killing prostitutes, he said, because they were easy to pick up. They were slow to be reported missing, and if they had any money on them, well, they ended up paying him for their own murder.
Oh Lord.
Occasionally, yeah, very disturbing. And these are from his words.
Yeah.
Occasionally, he would have sex with decaying corpses, not because he found dead women more exciting than live ones, but because necrophilia was less risky than killing another woman. If he pulled a muscle, listen, if he pulled a muscle or dragging a body out into the woods, he said he would claim a work-related injury and collect workers' comp.
Oh dear Jesus. Are you serious?
His containment is amazing, especially given his pride in what he did, said Reed Malloy, a psychologist and associate clinic professor at psychiatry at the University of California in San Diego. To have strong feelings of pride in one's career as a serial murderer and then not communicate that to anyone for 21 years is a measure of remarkable discipline.
Oh.
Melloway, who specializes in the study of sexual and serial murder and is author of The Psychopathic Mind, said that Ridgway seemed to focus obsessively on self preservation. His sexualized
Mm.
homicidal aggression is very narrowly channeled and does not carry over into any other antisocial behavior. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
He does not fit the usual psychological profile of serial killer.
Right.
Um, yeah. He, something to
Mm.
think about. From Melroy's conclusion, for an adolescent, having your mother wash your genitals would be highly exciting and
That's just.
arousing, but also be humiliating. With humiliation would come
Mm.
rage towards the mother. That is very common in serial murders. Displaced matricide, which is the killing of one's mother.
Yes.
Unconsciously, he is killing his mother over and over and over again.
Wow. That's
Hi- His
crazy.
his religious background. He during his killings. This is going on during his career. That's what he calls it. He became a devout Baptist during his second marriage, proselytizing door to door, reading the Bible aloud at work, home, and insisting his family followed these strict teachings, often crying while reading the Bible. He was
Oh boy.
regarded as a religious fanatic. That would also be a contributing factor into his concealed identity, I believe. So, yeah, he had a
So do you
lot.
think all religious fanatics have the predisposition to become serial killers? I'm just
No,
kidding.
but I think what he's doing is he's putting on the perfect mask for society.
Yes, and
He had a girlfriend and a wife throughout his whole entire killing spree.
that's what Ted did when He moved to Utah. He joined the Mormon church, and everyone thought, this is the nicest young man. He said he purposely did that because he has to present this perfect young man to society.
Yeah, I mean, he was, even after he was arrested, he was taken to his basically the whole entire field and forest area to where he left all his victims. The reporter says, the look on his face is like he was going to Disneyland. This is his opus.
Oh, my
This is
Lord.
his playing ground. This is his
Yeah.
legacy that he left behind. So, a deep, deep, deep
Wow.
passion for the love that he loved to do it. Um,
So, so he was raised by both parents, but he had a low IQ.
hmm
Did he have any substance abuse
Had no substance
issues?
abuse. Nope.
What about mental illness?
He had no mental illness. So
I
that's
wonder
that's what makes him an anomaly.
if doctors looked at him today, if they would find mental illness, because I find it hard that he
hmm
doesn't have a mental illness.
Very detachable, very soulless kind of individual. I can't wrap my head around him. He's very interesting. Um,
So here you have another great example of going to church doesn't make you a Christian
hmm
any more than walking into a garage turns you into a car.
right. I don't think.
Where is your heart? Where is your heart?
Yeah, to be able to detach. So if he's reading his Bible, proselytizing door to door, and then has this alternate life,
Whoa.
nothing has. Basically, in my opinion, the devil had him.
Absolutely.
It was very, very evil. And if you can't, you're trying to find some kind of mental illness going on here. I think it was a very, very malicious uh, pride in what he did. If you hear him describe it, it's his career, it's his legacy, it's his.
Yeah. No
Um,
remorse.
Only thing
No
I can
re-
find is he felt so insignificant. Maybe that's his low self-esteem, but
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Now, it was his okay. Even though he was raised by his both parents, was he happy? Did he have any issues with kids or?
Mm.
Okay.
No, like I said, his last wife of 17 years said he treated me like a newlywed.
Wow.
But
Okay.
the way he was able to detach and not let anything bleed into his normal
Right.
life, his street life,
Yeah.
his outside life.
Right.
Very disturbing, and I think they should, when he dies, I think they should do a test on his brain because he's different. He's
Yeah.
different from Gacy. He's different from Dahmer. He's different from Bundy.
And
Can't,
interesting, Ted Bundy helped the police find the Green River Killer. I found that interesting.
yeah, for 21 years. I mean, that's a long time for a town to be in fear. I'm
Yes.
glad he was brought to justice.
Yes.
And yeah, I think his only thing is to get his heart right with God, and because it's kind of crazy. It's scary if I was in his shoes too.
You know what's sad too, Jess, is prostitutes are looked down upon. Well, she's just a prostitute. She's just a piece of crap.
Yeah, that's why he picked who he picked. Underage, they wouldn't be reported right away. Many serial killers do that.
So when Jesus tells the Pharisees, prostitutes are going to get into heaven before you, I'm sure that was a slap in the face.
Oh, absolutely. They weren't.
But that goes back to even a prostitute.
Mhm.
God cares about that person.
Yes, he does.
They are not lower than anyone. They're in desperate
Mm-hmm.
circumstances that brought them to prostitution, more than likely.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's sad that they are kind of looked down as, well, they don't mean much. They're just a whore.
And it's just so sad how these men would prey on people that already had low self-esteem and they had rough growing ups and they're living on the streets.
I
They're
know.
prostituting themselves to prey on that. It's just a special kind of judgment, in my opinion, that's coming their way. It's just so sad.